Power gaming, but power gaming, but power gaming, but look at my list, it's so elite. Power gaming, but power gaming, but what are you going to do? I'm so fucking awesome because of my list.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of FloridaMan40k. I'm Jimmy Prescott. With me today we have a very special guest, Ruben Soft Hands Fernandez.
Hello, hello.
And also regular host Dan Rugged Face Smith.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
And John Calloused Soul Lennon.
Howdy, guys.
So how's everybody doing?
I'll start.
Doing very
doing well.
This is our 22nd episode, I believe. I feel like this has actually been... consistent may not be the word, but long-lived, in my opinion.
It's enduring, if nothing else.
That's a good word for it, yes.
Refuses to die.
Fact indeed.
That's the other side of the same coin, yes.
Yes. All right, well, what topics are we going to be getting into? Or anybody want to talk about how they've lived through the corona so far? I feel like that's top of the news recently.
It's literally the only thing anyone is talking about, so we're not going to go too heavy on it. Just kidding, we totally are. But, I don't know. I'm still alive. Working from home is like working normally, except I don't have to drive anywhere or put on pants. So, yeah, not too bad.
Both of those are wonderful.
Yeah, honestly.
I am apparently essential, and I have to work, which means I'm still interacting with hundreds of people a day, so it's been nice knowing y'all.
Oh.
I'm not interacting with Daniel.
Yep.
Does it help?
Working from home, no pants. It's all good.
I'm glad that's the common theme.
Putting the soft hands to good work.
Oh,
no.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
All right. Before we dive right in.
It's going to be one of those nights. It's one of those nights, that's all. Go ahead.
All right. So before we dive right in, we should introduce Mr. Ruben Fernandez. Ruben is one of my teammates for ATC. He is a member of Warhammer. Has been very successful in the ITC recently. I believe he was, what is it? You went to BAO, had one loss at SoCal, and I want to say you finished top. Were you 19 in the ITC last year? Overall?
19th, yes. 19th overall.
19 in the ITC, so yet another top 20 member for Brohammer. Normally plays Eldar, also dabbles a little bit with Chaos Space Marines. I think you were one of the fabled Leviathan players at LVO. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Feel free to, when did you start the hobby? Passion armies, what armies you play, highlight moments of 40K. Talk to us.
And brag a lot.
Yes, and brag a lot.
Okay.
Don't be. This is not the modest time of the podcast.
So this is not me, though. Okay, anyway. So I started playing in, I wouldn't say middle 7th edition. I bought a Dark Vengeance set, and I love the Dark Angel side. Actually, I really like the concept of a bike army and the year 40,000. Like, I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and it was the coolest thing also. So I immediately collected 1 million bikes and painted them and all that stuff. And then they were pretty okay in 7th, so I won a few games. But, I mean, once I started competing in tournaments, Sparkstar and all that kind of stuff, so it was kind of dominating the ridiculous, really ridiculous meta in 7th. Just was completely I couldn't handle it. So yeah, but anyways, that's kind of my, that was kind of my passion. And first passion was Dark Angels. Insert your favorite joke now, whatever. I love the faction. I love the aesthetic. And it's kind of what got me into the hobby. Didn't start playing competitively until I want to say early edition. I also have Thousand Suns. At some point I picked them up, and Magnus was broken as all hell. So just by the virtue of Magnus being who he was in 7th, I won a few games. But I really only started getting to competitive play, I want to say at the beginning of 8th. I played Reggie. He actually posted a picture of this in the Brohammer chat recently. Like I had my beautiful Ravenwing army, that is all bikes with Samael and a Dark Shot and all that stuff. And he brought just a dual Gatling, or whatever, Chaos Knight and some Berserkers and Rhinos. And he just destroyed me so hard. Like it was just the wars, like, and then at that exact moment, I'm like, okay, so there's a different game being played here. And that's kind of what triggered it, And ever since then, like I've been playing 40K. I've been attempting to play 40K competitively. I do really enjoy the competition. I've been doing the whole ITC circuit for about a year and a half. Made so many good friends that, the people, once you go to enough cons, like you get to know everybody. Like it's the same people over and over traveling all over the country. And it's just this community of, honestly, it's one of the suckiest parts about this Corona thing. Like we're kind of all missing out on that. And, but it's honestly a great thing to be a part of, as I'm sure everybody can agree. And that's kind of what led me here. I also play Eldar, as John said. I enjoy the elves. That's really kind of my competitive playstyle choice. Just a very fast, hard-hitting armies are just so much fun to play. And it's kind of what my style veers to, which is, I think I've been talking for a long while. Just somebody stop me and say something, please.
Absolutely. No, we enjoy the monologue. It's honestly, I think we actually met for the first time at the end of 7th edition. We played a doubles tournament, and I think I brought like the worst possible. What was it? I was with David Ozawa, and I told David, all right, we're going to bring really competitive lists, and I helped him write like an Iron Hand Death Star that was just unbeatable. And I proceeded to bring like the worst possible Iron Warrior Obliterator list in 7th edition when that was just like not a good thing to have. And so, I got table in turn 2, and then it was just me and David both playing 1,000 points of Iron Hands for 4 turns. And I think Ruben, who are you paired with?
I was playing
Chris Adorno?
Chris Adorno, who is long gone from the hobby. He's been missing for a while. Hopefully he'll come back, But he had his Blood Angel nonsense, and I think I had Fate Weaver and a Lord of Change with Brimstone Strike or something like that. I don't remember.
You had Fate Weaver, and you were running like a summoning list, right? Because me and Will fought you, and if I remember right, that was like one of those just insane, like, just
yeah.
games.
It was very fun. It was very, very fun. And I remember our game with John, we ended up winning because you guys failed the morale on one, like scout biker or something, or a regular biker. I don't remember.
It was a scout biker that lost combat to a blue horror unit and ran away. Not my best moment.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, it was, it's just one of those things that happens. I just remember that my army got wiped out in, about 2 turns because it was just the worst possible thing you could bring. And so it was literally just me and David, like, micromanaging 1,000 points of the most broken Space Marines possible against a full 2,000 point army. It was very close. But no, it's absolutely, Ruben is one of my closest friends on Brohammer, so I definitely wanted to get him on the show. Again, he's an ATC teammate. He's one of the guys that I do a lot of my list crafting, my theory talk with. Whenever I'm driving home from work, I've got to drive. I usually hit up Ruben and we just kind of talk 40K tactics. Definitely one of the guys I go to for my competitive insight. So I figured it was about time to get him on the show.
And just so everyone knows, Ruben was one of the masterminds behind the Broviathan list, correct?
That is true. I think it was technically his idea. I think we checked chats because I try to take credit that I don't deserve. Ruben was the first person to mention it that we could find. He mentioned it to me, like, could we actually do this? And then, and I think you had gotten the idea from Aurelio Correa, and then I can never pronounce his last name right. And then, we kind of adapted it, brought it to Siegler. Yeah. But I think Ruben was the first one to bring it to my attention. And that's kind of how the nightmare was born.
Yeah. It was also a fun time though. I mean, it's a horrendously boring army to play. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to ever play anything like it again. But it did the job. It definitely did the job.
It did its job. So throwback to the Leviathan. It's gone too soon, but also not soon enough. All right. So Ruben actually introduced me last night to Tabletop Simulator. Again, we're going to bring up the damn virus, but none of us are getting the games that we want to unless you live in some kind of 40K trap house. So we all need our fix still. So kind of one of the first things we wanted to bring up this episode was Tabletop Simulator. I'm going to call it TTS for the rest of the episode. It is actually a pretty cool tool. I've run and talks about it. Everyone's been trying to get me to get into it. I kind of resisted because I'm stubborn. But I did give it a whirl last night. I played 2 turns of Sisters of Battle versus Eldar last night. Actually had a fun time. It's not as hard to use as I thought it was going to be. After like the first movement phase, I kind of got into how you roll the dice with TTS. It actually got a lot better pretty fast. I think it's still a little bit slower than playing a normal game, but if I can play a game in 4 hours, that's about the same time as it would have been to drive to the game store, play a normal game, and drive back. So I don't see it as, that big of a deal. I just maybe won't be playing 3 games in one day. But overall, TTS is actually pretty cool. Ruben, I know you kind of started playing it a little bit before I did. I think you were one of the early adopters after coronavirus. We had a couple of guys at Brohammer who have been using it for a while. Like I know David and John. But you kind of picked it up the second that virus hit, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Tried a game as soon as they told us we had to stay home, I tried a game. It's like you said, I mean, it's a very useful tool. It's still an actual game for sure. I mean, especially if you have so the way it works is like when you load up the armies that you load up are already, colored however they are. So you have to come up with creative ways to like labeling units and, all this other stuff. And when you're running stuff that's like your sister's army from last night, like if it's a very MSU type build with a lot of bodies, it just becomes a big mess real fast. So, I mean, really, the bottom line is that you have to play by intent a lot of the time. But it's definitely, it's fixed. It's kind of meeting that need for a fix, I guess. While this whole thing goes over. I don't know. What other thoughts do you have on it?
My big thing is that I'm just looking for those practice tools. The big thing that everyone's talking about is, oh no, there's not going to be any tournaments for X months. But there will be tournaments again. I don't know when, sometime between now and, LVO, hopefully, there will be tournaments again. So when that happens, I think it's really going to be who spent this time preparing and who didn't. And maybe this is because I am, single, I don't have any kids. I've got the free time to practice 40K. So, when everyone's at home, I'm not taking care of kids. I want to keep getting better. I want to keep playtesting. I want to actually get ahead and paint my army. I've painted 10 models in the last week, which is not like an amazing pace, but we'll get somewhere. So we're going to keep pushing on that. But, I just want to stay ahead of the curve, ahead of the meta and not get rusty because let's say the tournament scene picks up again in September, October. Hopefully it'll be sooner than that, but let's say it's not. If we're all rolling into the Nova Open with no practice, well, someone's got to win. I want to be in as good of a position as I can be. I definitely don't want to just make silly errors where I never played against the Orc Psychic Awakening rules or 9th edition or whatever is out at the time because, you haven't been practicing. If you go in cold, you're going to lose a game to some kind of, something you didn't see coming. And that's just never a good feeling. So for me, I absolutely want to stay sharp. I want to keep talking to my friends. It's not the same social aspect. It's still good to, talk with my friends, but, I don't get to go to a tournament and see, 10 people at once that I enjoy spending time with. But it was good to, get an army on the table last night. Even if it was a virtual table, I still learned something in the game. I still got to see, okay, this is what my army looks like on the board. This is going to be the problem with moving it around. The squad marking problem was definitely a thing. But that's also a big thing. In a real game, you have to have those markings out. So, it's just the little things. with like how I need to move my models, how I need to screen. That's still valuable information that you can get on TTS.
For sure.
But that you're not gonna, but that you would forget if you didn't play 40k for 4 months. Like, you would just make some kind of like, yeah, my units are down, and then you'd be like, oh, I didn't interlock my screens, and now my character's being shot, and I just lost the game. Like, that would be a very bad way to go.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And it also kind of gives you the opportunity to try stuff that you wouldn't otherwise try. I guess, I'm no stranger to proxying for practice, right? But in TTS, you can actually get the actual model of the model you're trying to try with the exact, proportions and all of that. So it's actually pretty cool. Again, I've been messing with War Walkers for my Eldar army and all of that. And I mean, it's actually a pretty useful tool for that purpose,
Yeah,
have the
absolutely.
Models right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I've got to say, like, like my sister's brigade has quite a lot of bodies in it. It has a lot of, like, 30 Seraphim, 10 Zephyrim. I don't have all of that yet. I have ordered it, but I think a lot of, places were a little slow getting things shipped out. I don't even know if everything got shipped out in time. So we'll see if I ever get those models in the next couple months. But, like, I definitely do not have the army built. It certainly is not even approaching fully painted. I think I've got like 10 models done, as I said. So, like, actually, just getting to play with the army without having to proxy is kind of cool, because normally what I'd be doing is I'd be playing at a game store on like a Tuesday night, and I'd be like, okay, the Sanguinary Guard are the Zephyrim, the Assault Marines are the Seraphim, and the one dude with a red rubber band on his hand also has 2 Inferno pistols. Like, yeah, it works, it's fine for practice games, but it is actually kind of cool on TTS putting the models down, and especially for like armies that you just like wouldn't have anything remotely close for. Like if you went from like Tyranids to Iron Hands, that's hard to proxy with those models.
Yep. Agreed completely.
I'm going to work on getting Daniel and maybe Jimmy up to playing some TTS to get that fix. I know Dan's been looking at it, starting a couple new armies, so he's definitely going to need to get some practice in. But I don't know, it's a cool way, and honestly, it might actually be better on a weeknight. I haven't experimented with it yet, but I'm told that you can pause the game and save it and just restart it later. That actually might be a lot better for some people who don't have time on weeknights. So, like if you work till like 6 p.m. on a Monday through Friday, maybe your wife doesn't want you going to the game store and coming home at 11. What if you like played 3 turns Tuesday, played 3 turns Wednesday? Like you could do that after dinner both nights. Like you might be able to use it to get more practice. There's honestly a good chance that when this all blows over, I'll actually like still be using TTS at the end of it, because it is actually a really useful tool. I did appreciate it, and I'm hoping to get some more games in, get like a full 6-turn game in tomorrow. And hopefully we'll be able to talk more about it, but definitely want to up my games with this.
Agreed. Same here.
All right. Speaking of, since you kind of mentioned it before, using this as an opportunity to try new things, I think that's kind of the response in general for the coronavirus, right? It's, you're not prepping for a tournament right now. Optimistically, my next tournament is ATC, which is a team tournament, but there's also the possibility that my next tournament is like something in July, which could be 9th edition, or which could be, or maybe the Nova Open in September, which is a different rules format. Like there's not much you can realistically practice for right now. So I'm kind of thinking like you have to use this as an opportunity to play something completely different. Like for example, like I'd been running my Tyranid Ridge Runner list right up, like for the first 3 events of the year, took it to Canhammer and a couple RTTs. Great. Awesome. I love the army. But then like as soon as the writing was on the wall, like Adepticon got canceled. I switched to playing Sisters of Battle, because Sisters of Battle were probably the army that I had the least experience with. Up until last weekend, I had played 3 games total in an 11-year Warhammer career. I had played 3 games total that involved Sisters of Battle besides Souping and Celestine. And wow. I think 2 of those games, and all 3 of those were against. I'd never played a game with Sisters. I hadn't seen the new Miracle Dice on the table yet. Literally, I think I played Aaron in Florida twice, and then I played Ganyo at Las Vegas once. And yeah, and that was like a super army that also had 30 Death Watch and some Deathwing Knights in it. So like, I really had not seen Sisters of Battle on the table ever. I didn't know what any of the units did. I thought it'd be a really good challenge for me. So I really enjoyed playing the army. I got a couple of games in person, but now I want to kind of keep learning the army since it's such a low player count army that I feel like it's very valuable to know what it does so you don't get caught off guard the one time you play it. And as well, if I ever do get to take it to a tournament, there's definitely going to be that shock value of, I didn't actually know what this army did. Maybe that gives me an edge. And it's an army that's kind of hard to feel out on paper.
100%. It's actually very powerful. I was shocked, during our practice yesterday, that it's very powerful. Very, very powerful.
Sisters build a really good brigade. I really like that Sisters brigade.
And it's incredibly dynamic and janky and just fun. It's good. Very, very good.
Yeah, so I was very happy, getting to play Sisters, but I kind of want to keep experimenting with it. The first thing I tried out was a Sisters brigade, very heavy on the flag girls. I like having 30 Seraphim. I like having the Zephyrim unit. But I also had a White Scar Supreme Command, so I had a Smash Captain and a Slapland running behind the flag girls, and then 30 Silence and Deep Strike. So, starts a very durable core on the table, but has some fast moving units, and it deep strikes a lot, so you get to cover the board pretty quickly. Not a lot of long range guns, but it gets very close and personal very quickly. And with the Snare Captain, you can just kind of win any game that you get in close combat if you just hit a couple good rolls and save your units from being shot. So it feels like a good theme to me, but I kind of want to switch around and experiment with some other Sisters lists. I really want to try out Penitent Engines and Mortifiers. Because, on paper, I don't think that they're particularly... they're a good unit, but they're not oh my god, I have to take 6 of these. That's not what they look like on paper. But if I get them on the table, maybe I find out, they're actually useful, or they're harder to kill than I would have expected. And what I'm really going to use this for is test all of those middle units that I maybe wouldn't test if I was preparing for a tournament. So, the way my schedule was laid out, I was going to play an Adepticon and run a modified Genestealer Cult Exit Green Ridge Runner build. And that was supposed to be happening this weekend. And by the time I was back from that, I take a week to unwind while I'm looking at the Battle for Salvation team tournament in mid-April. While I'm running my Ridge Runners again, so I'm not changing my list. I'm not actually going and testing out new units. So maybe this 2 or 3 month period that we have, maybe we can use this to test out all of the different lists that we we all write that list during a lunch break, and then we never get to play it because we're not sure if it's good, and we're not willing to commit the time to find out because we have an event in 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I see the most value is when you just off the wall thing that you just came up with. Just a quick game on TTS or a quick couple of turns on TTS. It doesn't have to be a full game. You're not wasting a whole drive to the store and packing up your army or proxies for that army, and then it's just go on the computer and play for an hour and then see if it works or not. It's very useful.
There's also the whole thing about owning the models. Obviously, exactly. I do not own 6 Mortifiers or 6 Penitent Engines. I would like to because the models are badass, but I definitely don't. And if I play them and if I play Ruben and in 2 turns every single one of them is dead and I'm still 24 inches away from his Eldar army, I'm probably going to look at that and be like, okay, maybe I don't want to play this. But maybe maybe something else happens and, the Penitent Engines make it in, they're just a little tougher than you think, or they're just not important enough to shoot because of what else I've deployed, like Triple Exorcist. Maybe they get in there, start flailing people. I'm like, oh man, this army feels like it's good. Well, then I'm totally going to go buy those 6 Mortifiers, but I was probably never going to actually take the time to proxy them on a table. Unless I had some kind of tool like this.
Yep, exactly.
So we'll see. Only had the limited experience with GTS, so I don't want to. I know I've been praising it pretty hard the last couple minutes. Don't want to pretend that I know all about it, but it was fun, and it is definitely the best I've got right now. So I think that as long as you kind of keep it, kind of like you mentioned, I think you really have to play it by intent. There's definitely going to be scenarios where you drop the models and they fall over. But really, a normal game of 40k, the same stuff happens. You just got to talk to your opponent the whole time. Be friendly, talk about what you want to do, what you're trying to do, especially when you're doing things like, hey, I'm trying to put my models so that nothing can deep strike within 12 inches of this guy. You can physically measure that on TTS, but moving something a millimeter over is a lot harder because you have to be very precise with your mouse and the angles get kind of weird. So I think as long as you talk like, hey, the goal is that you can't deep strike in the 12 inches of these things, or you can't fit a 32 millimeter model between this gap, which is very hard to test on the tabletop or on the actual TTS thing. I think if you talk about that, you're going to have a good time. And especially you're not going to play any tournament games. So, just go have fun. And I think we're going to see a lot of people using TTS over the next several months. I've already talked to a lot of 40K players who are on it. I'm probably going to end up playing Steve Camprine on TTS in the next week. I'm setting up a game with Innes Wilson as well from Scotland. And that's kind of cool because I was never going to play Innes Wilson. He lives in Scotland. He doesn't go to Las Vegas. I don't go to the WTC. We were never going to just naturally play a game. But hey, with TTS, he's a good friend. I like to talk to him. It'd be fun to actually play a game with him.
Yeah, so that's an amazing feature. Just anywhere, anytime, anybody. That's great.
So I'm going to keep playing TTS. I'll probably bring it up again over the next couple of weeks after I get some more games in with it, and we'll see how it goes. I would encourage everyone to go give it a try and see if you like it. I'm sure it's not for everyone, but it is definitely the closest thing to practicing 40K that I'm going to get for a while. So maybe this is the excuse I need to bust out 10 impulsors without having to buy them. I don't know.
Yep, that's exactly right.
All right, Daniel Smith. I seem to recall that you wanted to talk as well about kind of list design and trying out new things.
Yeah, so that was one of the big things I was going to jump on, is, and you touched on it some, going on the tournament row, you're constantly playing what is the best and gives you the best chance at winning. And if you go to 1 GT a month and you're making minor changes to your list, that really takes up all your practice and hobby time. So you don't get the opportunity to try unique units. Like you were saying, you might never try the 12 sisters bully units or 12 model units, whatever. Anyways, you might not try those bully units in favor of other known commodities. Bullgrin perform that mid-table role, so you can splash guard, take Bullgrin, and you might never try the others. But this current time where we don't have that tournament push, you can try, especially with TTS, you can try 18 kilocans and 18 mech guns, and you're not spending the $1,000 it costs to build that. If it works out great, then you decide, oh, maybe that is worth the investment. I'll sell off one of my other armies and collect that. But you're not just making a blind purchase to play test it, or you're proxying, which is an approximation, because line of sight's a little bit different. That's really the main one. But assuming your goal is to come back and play incredibly well, and you have that little bit of an obsessive nature that a lot of us in Brohammer have, this current time frame is a wonderful opportunity to put it on the table and see if it works. And if you've been theory crafting something, just try it out, because you're not getting prepared for anything right around the corner. Take the time, mess with it, and you might stumble into something that on paper might look great, and then it actually sucks, and vice versa. On paper, it's okay, whatever, but you don't truly understand how durable, Tyranid Warriors with a 4-up save don't seem that durable. But when you start stacking all of the buffs and you get into real game practice, you realize just how durable that unit can be, and you wouldn't truly understand it until you put it on the table and actually get a feel for it. Which, on a side note, I figured that out with Grey Knights after 2 or 3 games. I was being too cautious with them, and it's the same thing. Until you play, you don't really get a good feel for your army. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that, if you guys had anything to add.
Dan, I know you mentioned the 18 kilocans. My understanding is that you are currently working on kind of building up. Last I heard, you were kind of looking at building up orcs, but also maybe Tyranids. Yeah.
So I did decide to sell my Space Marines, because the models I had worked in a list that isn't fun. And to play the other competitive Space Marines list, I would have had to reinvest everything anyways. So I just decided I'm going to sell Space Marines, and I was going back and forth between Tyranids and Orcs, and I settled primarily on Tyranids. I do still have some Orc stuff coming in. I just got my other box of Flash Jits from Brenton and some other stuff. But I decided Tyranids are a little bit more of a known commodity, and they have a special place in my heart as being my true first army. Like Jimmy and I got Dark Angels together to get our feet wet with the game, but Tyranids were my first army that I actually was like, I'm going to play these guys. I'm going to get them built and painted and everything. So any chance to play cool models, I'm going to take it. So I went with Tyranids.
Okay. I know we talked a little bit about some Tyranid lists. Are you thinking of getting on TTS? I know you have the VR set, but I've heard it works better on an actual just computer.
Yeah, so I got it and tried it on VR a year ago, and it was terrible. Like, it's a really cool and really immersive and so unmanageable that I'd rather just play a game. But now that I don't have the luxury to just go play a game, I'm going to reevaluate it on the desktop instead of on VR, and play test the multiple Tyranid builds I have, because I have a lot of the stuff coming in. Like, I'm building my first 3 Tyranid warriors right now, and that's 10% of the entire list. Like, I got 8 buggies I need to build, Exocrines I haven't even ordered yet. Like, so, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get those Exocrines right now with Games Workshop not doing sales and their web store exclusive. So if I want to practice with Exocrines, I'm doing it on TTS.
Okay, that makes sense. Honestly, hopefully we'll be able to get in some actual practice games on TTS. Especially what you mentioned, the Warriors. The Warriors are one of those units I really want to get on a table of some kind, virtual or otherwise. Because, yeah, on paper, it's so hard to place them. Like, they're only a 4-up save, but they ignore AP 1 and 2, potentially. You know, they're 3 wounds, but you can give them a 5-up feel of pain and -1 damage. You know, they're only 3 shots per model, but you can double shoot them and have the 5-up exploding hits. Like, there's so much back and forth for, like, why they could or couldn't be good. Like, I really need to see that whole package on the table before, like, I personally would go buy Warriors. I think I've got some really old beat-up ones from, like, an army I played in middle school, but honestly, if I like actually decide to take them to a tournament, I'd probably buy 9 more, but you know, that's like $150, so I want to actually see them first.
Yeah. So to kind of go off topic just a tiny bit, the reason I went ahead and bought them is because I realized against AP2 weaponry, assuming both units in cover and no units in cover, Tyranid Warriors are actually more durable than Grey Knight Paladins against like a heavy burst cannon, for example, or an Avenger Gatling cannon.
Yeah, I guess they are, because it just takes the Grey Knights down to that. Just takes the Grey Knights down to that same save. Okay, you make some good points.
Yeah,
and they get that sweet feel of pain.
Warriors. Exactly.
Yeah, Catalyst is nice. They're awesome.
And they're half the points of a paladin squad, and like sometimes they're just going to die and do nothing, but you're investing 200 points into a unit that they're shooting instead of the buggies or instead of the Exocrines. It's just another form of threat saturation. So that's my whole thought is I'm comfortable enough that they have enough different roles that it's worth just trying them out, getting them painted. I've had Tyranids sitting on a shelf for years. I can add a couple more to that shelf.
Just a fun quick note on why they're totally better than Paladins, asterisk. They are a troops choice, so they don't give up Gangbusters. Because Gangbusters does not work on troops units.
I didn't realize that, because I was about to rise to 7. So they're staying at 9 now.
Yeah, you can take that full 9-man squad and you will not give up another secondary there.
Well, I love it then.
All right.
So can you explain why they're so tough? And I don't know.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So the Tyranid Warrior is the generic loadout that you're probably taking is 25 points per model. They can be cheaper than that, but that's kind of the sweet spot in my opinion. It's toughness 4, 4-up save, 3 wounds. If you put the adaptation on them, they ignore AP 1 and AP 2. They are so kind of like Valorous Heart at that point. They are infantry, so it's relatively easy to give them cover if you want to. And then you cast Catalyst on them for a 5-up Feel No Pain. And finally, they have a stratagem that makes them -1 damage. You're lacking that natural 2-up save that a Paladin has, but you can get them to a 3-up save pretty easily, especially if you are in cover. Actually, that's the only way to get them to 3-up. But you can give them a Feel No Pain, which Paladins cannot have. And then you've got a pretty decent shooting list for a lot less points. Again, you're looking at 225 for the full brick of 9, which is, it's basic math. If you double shoot it, it's 54 shots. That is, Kronos could hit on 3s, reroll 1s, and every 5 to hit is an extra hit. So at that point, your 54-shot unit is averaging close to 60 hits at strength 5 AP 1, 24-inch range. So it's not that expensive. It's not like a huge investment in your army, but it can situationally be extremely durable. And it's just kind of the question of, is that actually tough enough to justify? Like, is a warrior unit going to do enough to make me think like, yep, I want to spend those points on it? But it also fills a troops choice. So like you can take one of the random Ripper Swarms that you didn't want to buy anyway, and now it's only costing your list 192 points. And for a 27-man brick that's relatively durable and puts out decent shooting and is actually decent melee, again, it's looking at 27 attacks, hits on 2s, strength 4, AP 2. But you can very easily spend a command point, do some stuff, get them to AP 3. It's not that hard. So there's a lot of options.
And I'm just going to jump in because there's 2 pieces of tech that I really like with them. So one is their heavy weapon options that you can take. And I can't, the Barbed Strangler, that one. So it's Assault D6, Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1, and it's 5 more points than bringing a Death Spitter. So at first blush, you're like, well, on average dice, you're getting 1 more shot for 10 more points. But that weapon special ability is you add +1 to hit against units of 10 or more models. So you can get to Symbiostorm triggering on your 4-ups to hit with 2d6 shots. So it's just that many more hits, especially if you spike and roll like a 10 or something. You can get just a ton of shots into a Horde army, which strength 5, AP 1, damage 1 is perfect for killing anyway. And again, like you said, with double shooting and everything, that's just the potential to get a ton more shots than you would normally. And on average against non-10-man squads, you're averaging the same efficiency as before. So you're not dropping off, you're just raising your ceiling for 10 points. So that's one of the 2 techs that I really like.
And I think that you can actually take 3 Barbed Stranglers if you do the full 9-man unit. So now you're looking at 240 points, which is still not like a significant, it's not a small part of your army, but if you play against someone who's running, a bunch of AP 3, damage 3 guns, and they just light your warriors up and remove them from the face of the earth, it's not that big of a deal. It's not like game losing, but there are many situations, especially, in a kind of a counter horde role, where they will absolutely dump a lot of hits on something like Orcs, which is actually a matchup that Tyranids kind of traditionally struggle with.
And now the other role and piece of tech that I love for them is actually in a defensive role as a frontline screen. And so I'm actually building my warriors right now, and I decided to go with Lash Whips on at least 4. I haven't exactly figured it out. I'm probably going to leave that arm off until I get some practice games in. But the idea is White Scars and other armies, White Scar Centurions specifically, are damage 4. They're going to clean you up pretty quick, especially if they go first. But if they charge you in melee and they kill the Lash Whip model, they have to consolidate and pile in to the closest model. So even if they kill the Lash Whip, it stays on the table until it gets the opportunity to attack. So they cannot get through the Tyranid warriors to then go touch your Exocrines or buggies or anything you might want to protect. They can't consolidate and pile in past you to go tag stuff, because you will stay there until you attack and then you pull the model. They can get around that if they can have a fight twice ability at the end of the combat phase. But if they don't have that ability, where you die is where they're stuck. And so you pull the models, you might not even have to fall back if you kind of set it up properly. And that's why I'm trying to figure out the exact number of Lash Whips I need. But because your base is greater than 1 inch. So if they have to consolidate and pile into the Lash Whips, and then you pull the Lash Whips on your turn, you're not even falling back. You're just shooting them and going about your day.
Yeah. The Lash Whip tech is very nice. I think Ginster Cult does something similar with Metamorphs. This is the same logic as that. It's a little more of an investment than the Metamorphs, but they're also a lot more effective in many ways. Really, it is honestly quite cool. I'm going to read in just a second the actual Lash Whip rules just to clarify it. So the actual Lash Whip rule is, if the bearer is slain in the fight phase before it has made its attacks, leave it where it is. When its unit is chosen to fight in that phase, the bearer can do so as normal before being removed from the battlefield. So you kill it, it just stays there and will eventually fight on death whenever it's ready. And also, if they just go murder that unit, you can just save it for last. You're not in a hurry at that point.
Exactly. And so, I don't know. For a very simple unit up front, like when you described it at first, it's T4 or 4 up save, 3 wounds. That's at face value all you're getting, and it's overpriced. But then you just look into all the buffs and intricacies and little ways to play that unit, and suddenly it just fills any role that it needs to.
Yeah. I don't know. I like the Warriors. Like, I really want them to work. They're such an iconic Tyranid unit. I'm 100% not sold on them working, but now's a great time to figure it out and playtest kind of the off-meta Tyranid lists, because I know what Kraken Stealers do. I know what Ridge Runners do. That's not what I need to be practicing with right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jimmy.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I'm excited because, coming in, Tyranids, like their appearance and their size and everything, it is very much like a centerpiece style unit. And in as long as I've played the game or seen it played, I don't remember them ever really having a great presence, so it's neat to see them at least trudging a little bit towards that.
So I've been playing since high school. Is that when we started, Jimmy? And I have never once before the past month or so actually cared to own a Tyranid Warrior model.
They're honestly cool models.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, they're super cool. I just knew it would be a dead investment. I would never play them, so I didn't ever want to go out of my way to actually get one.
Unless you play Kill Team, because for some reason they're getting Kill Team. That's exciting.
Well, now they're at least okay in 40k.
Yep. It's true.
Ruben, you mentioned earlier that you're kind of working on some Warwalkers for your Eldar. Are you looking at testing any other kind of different units in the context of having so much spree not a tournament time?
So Warwalkers are the stuff I'm trying right now, and they seem to be working really well. Like their shooting is pretty horrendous, but, and it punishes Tau really, really well. Which having Ziegler in our team is kind of essential. But they have their weaknesses, obviously. But other than that, I mean, there's not much else that I wanted to try on TTS. I mean, I've already done the support weapon thing with the Shadow Weavers, which, in my opinion, is superior to the standard Viper Cannon, which is what most other players are running right now. There's really not much else. I want something that I've always wanted to try that I haven't. It's just a Prophets of Flesh, literal flesh wall, just like 100 racks or something like that. I have to figure out what to support it with. But like with the new missions, that sounds pretty strong, just because it holds the board really well. It's just who has the time or the will to put 100 tracks on the board, right, on an actual game.
I definitely don't, but TTS would be a good time for it.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I am. I mean, I want to try. An impulsive one. White Stars tactile build. White Stars are still very near and dear to my heart. Also, they do impulsors really well, so I want to try that. Again, like you said, I don't want to buy 10 impulsors, but it sounds like fun. So let's see where it goes.
Yeah, I think White Scar Impulsors are probably the third list that I'm going to try out over the next month or two. Like, I actually own 4 Impulsors, but I've only built one of them, and I just haven't really gotten around to building the other 3 because they were kind of painful to build. So I haven't actually done it yet. But, eventually, that could be a very good list. Like, if you modify the yellow white scars of LVO fame, I think there was something solid underneath that, and I think you could do a good pure white scar list. I definitely want to experiment with it, try it out, but I realistically wasn't going to get to do that as long as I still had like a tournament in 3 weeks, tournament in 2 weeks that I was always kind of rolling to. So we'll see. Like maybe we'll come out of this quarantine and I'll be playing Sisters of Battle or White Scars instead of my Ridge Runners, which right now I would say is my staple competitive army. Maybe this kind of experimentation time would actually let me play an army that I normally wouldn't have looked at, and maybe it'll be better than what I was considering. And I think what's really going to happen is that when this quarantine ends, and it will, it's all about when, I think that the meta for that month afterwards is going to be the weirdest, most diverse that we have ever seen at any point. And maybe 9th edition hits before then. Maybe 9th edition hits before then, and then it doesn't really matter. But even then, what's the worst thing that happens? I spent a lot of time playing 40k and talking to my friends. Like, that's kind of what I already do. So I don't see it as a bad thing at all. All right. Did either of you guys have anything else to add? Dan, Jimmy, Ruben?
I think that's actually pretty good. The other topics that I kind of want to talk about are going to be like half episode to full episodes on their own. So we'll probably save those for next week. As well as maybe one thing we can do in the future is sit down and like write a list live together to explain how we look at things and do list building theory instead of just like, hey, here's a good list, you can net list. Like getting past that point and tweaking and making a list your own so it fits your strengths, I think is a very valuable piece in the next step to getting closer to that 5-0, 6-0. So that's something I want to talk about in the future, but for today, that's a little bit of a heavy topic.
It definitely would be a good thing to explore in the future, though.
Yeah, so I put it out there. So, plug, if anyone's interested, put a comment wherever you listen to us or message us and let us know, because I like hearing from y'all.
All right, absolutely. I think that's about all we had. Next week, we will probably have someone else on the show just to, bring in some fresh blood, diversify a little bit, and get some interesting topics in. We will see who that ends up being. But, tune in next time, certainly. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, all of the normal stuff, like, subscribe, whatever the cool kids say.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you again, Ruben, for coming on. And go ahead, Jimmy.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, thank you guys for listening. Good to see our audience interaction and all that every week. Send it to the guys if we have any questions and all that. But we'll catch you next week.
Yep. Thank you, Ruben.